All right, I am going to try to finish this chapter. I have a hard time getting it done in one reading. So we're reading 3. I'm up in Raleigh and babysitting the little, and Mom and Dad went to go look at a house. We're celebrating her 2nd birthday. Had a big morning. Okay. Where are we in this? I don't remember where we stopped. I'm going to start right here. I know I've read this part again, but we're just going to start here and go from there. Once he added, when I confronted him with this, he admitted it, even joked. You're right, he would say. That's just the way I am. I can't help it. Talk about being jealous. He never liked anyone he had been involved with to be involved with someone else. It was like putting you in a box and only he could lift the lid and let you out, nobody else. When I confronted him with this, he admitted it, even joked about it. You're right. That's just the way I am. I can't help it. Once he added, I guess it's complicated because we work together and I have to see you with another man. He said this as if I never had to see him with another woman. I'm sure everyone who had a serious relationship with Elvis had this problem. I'm sure it was that way with Priscilla, Linda, or any of the others. You were his property, and that's just the way it was. I wonder what made him like that. If it was part of that where they said once he loved you, you were always be in his heart. He would always care for anyone that he loved. I'm not sure. I would love to have a psychologist go and break him down. Wouldn't that be interesting? I also found that once it became known that I had an affair with Elvis, it often ruined my relationships with other men. They might act at first as if it didn't bother them, but sooner or later they began feeling that they couldn't measure up, that they weren't as exciting or as a good lover as Elvis. They wanted me to compare them to Elvis or put him down verbally, which I would never do because I love the man. Like, yeah, you were better than he was. She would never do that. I respected him, faults and all. Elvis was truly a superior human being, so they could never get me to say anything that was derogatory about Elvis just to make them feel better. That took its toll, as it would in any man-woman relationship. See, it's funny, even though she felt like what did she say, owned him? And that he was so jealous of her, she still loved him and cared for him. So it's like it never detracted or distracted her. It wasn't a deterrent at all. So, I don't know. Even though he put her down and did some things. Oh, that's where we are. He was about to be cruel. He was saying some cruel things about her in front of other people. Like how good she was in bed and she was a good lay and all that kind of stuff. In front of people, that's so, like, why would he do that? But yet, even though he did it, she still remained a good friend of his. When Elvis let me know the kind of lifestyle he wanted to have, and I knew I wasn't going to be included except at his whim, I had an entirely different attitude about sex and having relations with other men. So this is kind of a growing up time period for her because, remember, she was a virgin when she met Elvis, and he took her virginity. And so now she's starting to have some relationships with other guys. I was never promiscuous, and I never had one-night stands because I simply didn't believe in them. But if I knew a man well enough and we had been seeing one another for quite a while, I could see nothing wrong with having sex with him. But there had to be a mutual liking and a mutual respect before I was interested. Elvis didn't like this new attitude, and he always managed to make some snide or even cutting remark whenever my behavior bothered him. But still, we remained friends. There was only one time when I couldn't take his exaggerated jokes about my romances any longer, and I walked off the stage, and it hit the headlines the next day. But that is a story I will tell later. Most times I ignored his sarcasm and let him have his fun. And Elvis could really be cruel when he wanted to be. During a period when he was dating Sheila Ryan, he was doing the show and Priscilla was in the booth next to Sheila. He introduced Sheila to the audience and then Priscilla. "We all get along fine. There's no problem," he told the audience. Then he turned to the band and said, "Mike Stone ain't got no balls. Mike Stone is a stud my ass." It was addressed to the band, but he said it loud enough that Priscilla and some of the audience heard him. There was the brat side of him coming out again when least expected. Mike Stone ain't got no balls. Mike Stone is a stud my ass. Like I said, our relationship was strange in a way because we saw one another daily. He still invited me to his suite to just visit or to entertain some of his guests. He did that with many of those in the show, especially the singers. He loved to show off our talents to his visitors. "Listen to the way she sings this. Watch that high note," he would say like a proud father showing off his children. We would sit all around the room and someone might start a few bars, and before long we would all join in the song. Elvis was always happy when we were doing this kind of spontaneous singing. It was his kind of entertainment. Sometimes he would ask me up to the suite or into his dressing room just to talk, and if I wasn't busy, I would go. If I was busy, I would just tell him I had another date. But when he was in real trouble, he would always call and talk to me on the telephone, sharing his feelings, and I would listen to his problems. Usually not offering any solutions, but at least I would be a good listener. In Charleston, West Virginia one night, I was in the hotel room asleep with my boyfriend at the time, and sometime just before dawn, the telephone rang and rang. Sleepily, I picked it up. "Kathy, I need to see you right away. Can you come up to talk?" I was so sleepy I didn't recognize the voice and thought it was one of the musicians, so I said through my yawns, "Oh, can we talk about this on the bus tomorrow?" "No, sweetheart," the voice was pleading. "I won't be on the bus tomorrow." Still insistent, I said, "Let's talk tomorrow, Glendy." "This isn't Glendy, honey. This is Elvis. Please come up. I need you." I left my puzzled date and headed for the suite. When I got upstairs to his suite, before I walked through the door, I was wondering, what am I in for? What's going on? Then I saw Dr. Nick walking out, shaking his head. He didn't say anything. He just kept shaking his head as if to say, "You're really in for it, Kathy. You got a problem on your hands tonight." As I entered the darkened room, so this is in, where did he say? Charleston, West Virginia. As I entered the darkened room, quite on edge by now, I could barely make out the silhouette of Elvis lying on his bed. He had the water running in the bathroom sink for a soothing sound effect, plus the snow pattern from an off-the-air television channel, which he'd recommended to us to help get to sleep. He also had cotton in his ears to keep him from hearing the outside noise, because there were hundreds of fans outside chanting, "Elvis, Elvis, Elvis." This happened so often, the sound just became a part of the background. The windows, as usual, were covered with tin foil to keep the sun out so he could sleep. Elvis was not sedated. He hadn't taken any sleeping medication, and this is one time he would have been better off if he had. "Come here, baby, and hold me," he spoke softly. "Come here, baby, and hold me." He knew I had my own boyfriend with me in the hotel. "I'm sorry I bothered you, but I appreciate your coming up to help me." I was there strictly to help a friend in need, to soothe his disturbed spirit. "What's happened?" I asked. "She's gone. It's over." I knew he had to mean Priscilla was leaving him, but I still couldn't figure it all out, so Elvis explained. "When I went home, I picked up Lisa Marie, and she told me out of the mouths of babes. What did she tell you? She said her mommy was kissing Mike. Oh, I knew it was inevitable, but I've never thought it'd happen like this. My heart went out to Elvis, but I also thought to myself, well then, how did you expect it to happen? I thought of all the time he'd shut Priscilla out of his life, all the times he didn't want to go back home. And frankly, I wondered how'd she gone on with the marriage as long as she had. Elvis talked to Priscilla about what Lisa Marie had said, and that's when Priscilla told Elvis she was leaving him. He seemed to understand how Priscilla felt and knew that a divorce was inevitable, but he hated for Lisa Marie to be involved, and he was upset about his inability to make the marriage work out. I know we're just not right for each other, he told me, but I hate to think of what we're about to go through. I hate to think of what's going to happen to Lisa. He needed to talk, and we were still talking long after the sun came up. Well, Elvis was doing most of the talking, and I was doing the listening. He was really destroyed over Priscilla's decision to finally leave him. He was so proud of his little family and crazy about his daughter, and it was difficult for him to finally face the fact that Priscilla was no longer able to stay married to him. We lay there in his bed talking about his fears. All I could do was calm him down and be positive about the whole thing, assuring him he'd live through it and that he'd love again and that it was for the best. As we were holding one another and he was clinging to me, he said, I want you to know I'm grateful for you being here. I can feel you loving me. Elvis was going through the very difficult process of being able to accept Priscilla's decision intellectually, but not able to cope with the reality of it emotionally. It was actually days later that his anger began to build. The thing that got him most was that Mike was supposedly a friend of his, and that he had been paying for Priscilla's karate lessons with Mike. My feeling was that if it hadn't been Mike Stone, it would have been someone else. Priscilla was just plain lonesome and felt alienated from Elvis and his life. She needed to be loved and appreciated. Early in the relationship, of course, when I saw Elvis with someone else, I would have a pang of jealousy. As time went on, I truly wanted him to be happy, and I'm certain he felt that way about me. In fact, during our long relationship, he was with Linda Thompson for 4 of those years. Linda was a former Miss Tennessee. She was fun, vivacious, charming, and one of the most intellectual girls Elvis dated. She dressed beautifully with a lot of flash and spent Elvis's money with great ease. It was obvious that they enjoyed one another's company. In fact, many times Linda would go out to dinner with Elvis and his dates. What? Sounds funny, but Linda accepted it and just concentrated on having a wonderful time. Well, that's crazy. She never talks about that in her book. Elvis and I still talked a great deal about spiritual growth, religion, psychic phenomena, astrology, and other metaphysical subjects. We shared a common interest, and he kept telling me about his friend Larry Geller, who was also his hairdresser for a few years. Because of Larry's influence over Elvis and the increasing amount of time the two of them spent together, reading books and talking, the colonel and the bodyguards ganged up on Elvis and pressured him to make Larry leave, and finally he did. That was in 1967. At one time, Elvis told me, he was so involved with the spiritual side of life that he was convinced he should go to a monastery and was serious about it. I guess this scared everyone to death, and Larry was ousted from the fold for a period of time. They felt it was his influence that had changed their superstar. Elvis said that he figured out for himself that he could do more for humanity by remaining a popular and influential singer than he ever could in a monastery. He finally understood that God's gift to him was his voice. And his plan for Elvis was for Elvis to use that voice to reach out to others and give them happiness. He figured that out. Elvis said one day, "Kathy, you've got to meet this guy. I want you to meet him." Elvis invited him to Las Vegas, and I finally got to meet Larry, which was the beginning of a long and wonderful friendship. We all had so much in common, and soon Larry was back in the fold, a part of Elvis's entourage once again. I think Larry's influence was very good for him, and I know he had missed Larry and his approach to life's mysteries. It isn't easy to describe my evolving relationship with Elvis. There was always a closeness, even when we were angry with one another. There was always a meeting of the minds on a different plane than the mundane parts of our lives. We still needed one another at times to feel complete. When he wasn't around, I always felt as if some part of me was missing, and it had nothing to do with sex. It was much deeper and more complicated than that. Of course, when you're a close friend of the star of the show, there are always people who want you to give him a message, or they try to make a point with you in order for you to pass it on to the boss. That happened frequently, especially about his choice of songs or music. And our relationship sometimes brought harmless and humorous remarks from some of the people in the show, but for the most part, they accepted me and accepted the situation without comment. I'm really struggling with this chapter, trying to explain my relationship with Elvis Presley, but I guess the best way of all is to say that we loved one another in a very special way, a way that transcended the pettiness of most relationships, and for the most part, we were content with the way things were and the way we felt about each other. After the emotionally driven peaks and valleys, we had planted a seed of understanding, which continued to grow for 7 long and very wonderful years. For the first few months of our relationship, I had let my deep love for Elvis suppress me and make me a slave to my feelings. But our relationship moved steadily from one plateau to another until it became something we could both love and appreciate. We were free, yet bound to one another, for better or for worse, and just knowing the other was there made us both feel loved and more secure. She was a good friend to him, a very good friend. She was there when he needed to talk. And he called her up there to talk about when Priscilla was leaving. And she had said that sometimes he didn't even want to go back to Tennessee after a tour or wherever they were. So he knew it wasn't working, but it still hurt him. It hurt him for Lisa to have to go through a separation of her parents, and it hurt him that he couldn't make the marriage work. He just wanted someone at home. See, I just feel like if she could have been what he needed, spiritually, emotionally, if she was accepting of an open relationship with him, an open marriage, which what woman is going to be that way? But if she understood him, he wanted his little family at home at Graceland for him to come home to. And if she had not fussed, and really I don't know a woman that could put up with this, but unless you just loved Elvis so much you'd take whatever you got from him. But if she could just stay at home and be his little wife and wait on him, and if she was never fussing, never complaining, could tell he was on his side, enjoyed reading the spiritual books, and if she was a Christian and she had her life at Graceland and loved being a mama and I just really grasped that side of his life, the family side. And then when he came home, she would welcome him with open arms, no matter who he'd had in the bed in Las Vegas or on the road touring. And she just accepted her part. He may end up not wanting to play around so much. You know, he might have done it some, but then she would always receive him with open arms, and she was there for him spiritually and emotionally and physically for him. It might have worked, but it didn't. So So anyway, that's just my thoughts. Alrighty, well, I will talk with you guys later. Okay, thank you for listening. Bye.